So welcome back once again, just a few minutes later really, to Channel 514 and SPK Plus. And this is going to be the fourth episode in our series exploring ancient literature in the part of that series dealing with Mesopotamian literature. And we're still using myths from Mesopotamia from Oxford. And in this video, we're going to tell or present and discuss some of the important texts that deal with heroic humans, that deal with um, heroic men. Um, I guess they're all men. I can't think of a story about a heroine, but so mainly there's the story of Adapa, the story of Etana, and then after those two, we'll talk about the earlier Sumerian poems that are part of the Gilgamesh literature. So, not the Epic of Gilgamesh, but the older poems on which it's based or from which it developed. And we use one of those poems, which is called In Those Days, in Those Far Off Days, in our second study in our 10-part series, which is called Death, Judgment, and Life. So, without further ado here, let's talk about Adapa. Now, this actual text, let me see if it mentions here exactly how far back it goes. It says here that the story as we know it comes from some fragmentary tablets. So the tablets are kind of busted up and not in good shape, and so we don't have really a full nice, perfect edition or version of the story. But these broken tablets, they come from Tel El Amarna in Egypt, which was the capital of the pharaoh Akhenaten. He was Amenhotep IV, and then he stopped worshiping the god Amun and created a new solar cult, of which he was himself the high priest. And so this pharaoh Akhenaten, maybe you've heard of him, he built a new capital, Akhet Aten, and um, the Arabic name for that place is Tel El Amarna. And so we have a lot of Akkadian, Middle Eastern, Near Eastern, Mesopotamian literature from Tel El Amarna, because we have, well, I should say, because the Akkadian language was used in all diplomatic correspondence at that time. So this would have been in the second half of the second millennium BC. So in the Egyptian New Kingdom, or in the Hittite Kingdom in Anatolia, and in all of these places, they were using Akkadian for diplomatic letters and all that sort of thing. And so we have a lot of texts written in Akkadian from Tel El Amarna, and they're collectively known as the Amarna letters. So I'm not sure if this text Adapa is classified as belonging to the Amarna letters, but the tablets that we're going to be uh, reading in translation, they're from Amarna. So they actually were found in Egypt, is my point, and not in Mesopotamia. But the story is Mesopotamian. And as some background, the character Adapa was traditionally believed to have been the first priest of the god Ea in the most ancient Sumerian city, which is known as Eridu. So the god Ea, I mentioned him in our second video when we discussed Enuma Elish. He was believed to be the ruler of this watery realm that existed underground, and he was believed to be very wise and to have all kinds of secret knowledge and that kind of thing. And so Adapa is believed to have been his first high priest, way back in, the most ancient time that existed in Mesopotamian tradition. So I'm just going actually to read this whole thing as we have it because it only takes up about 4 pages, and it's pretty simple, really. It's a nice or an interesting story. Um, I won't spoil it before reading it for you, but at the very beginning there are several lines missing, and again there are blanks and gaps in the text. So I'll just pause very briefly to give you the idea that we've come to a break in the text before I continue. So we'll read now. That's my gesture for we're reading now. Thoughtfulness. His word commands like the word of Anu. He, Ea, made broad understanding perfect in him, Adapa, to disclose the design of the land. To him he gave wisdom, but did not give eternal life. At that time, in those years, he was a sage, son of Eridu. Ea created him as a protecting spirit among mankind, a sage. Nobody rejects his word. Clever, extra wise, he was one of the Anunnaki. Holy, pure of hands, the Pashishu priest who always tends the rites. He does the baking with the bakers, does the baking with the bakers of Eridu. He does the food and water of Eridu every day, sets up the offerings table with his pure hands. Without him no offerings table is cleared away. He takes the boat out and does the fishing for Eridu. At that time Adapa, the son of Eridu, when he had got the leader, Ea, out of bed, used to feed the bolt of Eridu every day. At the holy quay, Kar Usakar, he embarked in a sailing boat, and without a rudder his boat would drift. Without a steering pole he would take his boat out into the broad sea. And here it says, gap of uncertain length. And then moving on. South wind. Send him to live in the fish's home. South wind, though you send your brothers against me, however many there are, I shall still break your wing. No sooner had he uttered these words than South Wind's wing was broken. For 7 days South Wind did not blow towards the land. Anu called out to his vizier Elabrat, "Why hasn't South Wind blown towards the land for 7 days?" His vizier Elabrat answered him, "My lord, Adapa the son of Ea has broken South Wind's wing." When Anu heard this word, he cried, "Heaven help him!" rose up from his throne. "Send for him to be brought here." Ea, aware of heaven's ways, touched him and made him wear his hair unkempt, clothed him in mourning garb, gave him instructions. Adapa, you are to go before King Anu. You will go up to heaven, and when you go up to heaven, when you approach the gate of Anu, Dumozi and Gizida will be standing in the gate of Anu, will see you, will keep asking you questions. Young man, on whose behalf do you look like this? On whose behalf do you wear mourning garb? You must answer, 2 gods have vanished from our country, and that is why I am behaving like this. They will ask, who are the 2 gods that have vanished from the country? You must answer, they are Dumozi and Gizida. They will look at each other and laugh a lot, will speak a word in your favor to Anu, will present you to Anu in a good mood. Then, when you stand before Anu, they will hold out for you bread of death, so you must not eat. They will hold out for you water of death, so you must not drink. They will hold out a garment for you, so put it on. They will hold out oil for you, so anoint yourself. You must not neglect the instructions I have given you. Keep to the words that I have told you. The envoy of Anu arrived. Send to me Adapa, who broke South Wind's wing. He made him take the way of heaven, and he, Adapa, went up to heaven. When he came up to heaven, when he approached the gate of Anu, Dumuzi and Gizida were standing in the gate of Anu. They saw Adapa and cried, "Heaven help him! Young man, on whose behalf do you look like this? Adapa, on whose behalf do you wear mourning garb?" 2 gods have vanished from the country, and that is why I am wearing mourning garb. Who are the 2 gods who have vanished from the country? Dumuzi and Gizida. They looked at each other and laughed a lot. When Adapa drew near to the presence of King Anu, Anu saw him and shouted, "Come here, Adapa! Why did you break South Wind's wing?" Adapa answered Anu, "My lord, I was catching fish in the middle of the sea for the house of my lord Ea. But he inflated the sea into a storm, and South Wind blew and sank me. I was forced to take up residence in the fish's home. In my fury, I cursed South Wind." Dumuzi and Gizida responded from beside him, spoke a word in his favor to Anu. His heart was appeased. He grew quiet. "Why did Ea disclose to wretched mankind the ways of heaven and earth, give them a heavy heart? It was he who did it. What can we do for him? Fetch him the bread of eternal life, and let him eat." They fetched him the bread of eternal life, but he would not eat. They fetched him the water of eternal life, but he would not drink. They fetched him a garment, and he put it on himself. They fetched him oil, and he anointed himself. Anu watched him and laughed at him. "Come, Adapa, why didn't you eat?" "Alas for downtrodden... Why didn't you drink? Didn't you want to be immortal? Alas for downtrodden people." "But Ea, my lord, told me, you mustn't eat, you mustn't drink." "Take him and send him back to his earth." And then gap of unknown length to end of story. So that's our story there. So he gets to heaven. He's summoned there, and his patron, the god who rules the underground waters, he tells him they're going to try and give you food and water that'll make you die, so you don't want to eat it or drink it. And instead, when he gets there, they all like him so much that they want to give him water and food that'll make him live forever, and he's not having it. So if he had only decided differently, then we would live forever. But so there's this misunderstanding that has sad results for us. So this other story is called Etana, and in this one, this character Etana, he rescues an eagle, which is lying in a pit. The eagle has had its wings broken due to this situation with a serpent. He eats the serpent's young, and so he ends up being punished by having his wings broken and being cast into a pit. And so this character Etana, who is the king of Kish, which is one of the city-states of old Sumer, he rescues the eagle, and helps it get back to health and be able to fly again. And so the eagle rewards him or repays him by carrying him up to heaven, and he has adventures there. But if I remember correctly, because I'm doing this with no preparation, it ends badly. The eagle is going to help Etana find this plant. There's a similar plant in the Epic of Gilgamesh, but the plant of birth is what it's called. And he makes different visits to heaven, or attempts at this, and he wants to, once he finds out about this plant, then he wants to get that because it'll make him live forever, or it has miraculous properties, but he's not able to get it. And so I'll just, I think, read the last bits of the text here, and it's on, it's part of the third tablet. This text, there are 3 tablets, and let me see if I can find out where and when exactly it comes from. It says here, tablets of the Old Babylonian version come from Susa in Elam and from Tel Harmal. A Middle Assyrian version comes from Ashur, and the standard version from Nineveh, to which may be added unprovenanced tablets in museum collections. So we have some, it says here, but the story is certainly much older, for Lunana, the demi-sage of Shulgi, king of Ur, who reigned 2150 to 2103 BC, is credited as the author, and the ascent of Etana on an eagle's back is shown on cylinder seals of the Akkadian period, which is 2390 to 2249 BC. So it goes back a long way, is what they're saying here. And there are different, more recent versions of it. By recent, I mean from the 2nd millennium BC. So there are old Akkadian versions of it, and then there are old versions from the period they call Old Babylonian and Middle Assyrian, and probably a Neo-Assyrian version known as the Standard Version. And it says here, Etana is the only Mesopotamian tale to have been identified unequivocally on ancient cylinder seals. And I showed you one of those in our last presentation. It's a cylinder-shaped clay object with cuneiform writing on it in raised relief, and you would press that into a wet clay tablet to affix a seal, and so to stamp it, So I do have, I will read just the last bits of the story here. Etana opened his mouth and spoke to the eagle. "My friend, that god showed me another dream. We were going through the entrance of the gate of Anu, Elil, and Ea. We bowed down together, you and I. We were going through the entrance of the gate of Sin, Shamash, Adad, and Ishtar. We bowed down together, you and I. I saw a house with a window that was not sealed. I pushed it open and went inside. Sitting in there was a girl, adorned with a crown, fair of face. A throne was set in place, and beneath the throne crouched snarling lions. I came up, and the lions sprang at me. I woke up terrified. The eagle said to Etana, 'My friend, the significance of the dreams is quite clear. Come, let me carry you up to the heaven of Anu. Put your chest over my breast. Put your hands over the quills of my wings. Put your arms over my sides.' He put his chest over its breast. He put his hands over its feathers, put his arms over its sides. The eagle tied its load on securely, took him up a mile, and spoke to him to Etana. 'See, my friend, how the country seems. Inspect the sea. Look carefully for its features. The country is only the edge of a mountain. And whatever has become of the sea?' The eagle took him up a 2nd mile and spoke to Etana. 'See, my friend, how the country seems. Whatever has become of the country?' The eagle took him up a 3rd mile and spoke to Etana. 'See, my friend, how the country seems. The sea has turned into a gardener's ditch.' When they came up to the heaven of Anu, they went through the gate of Anu, Elil, and Ea. The eagle and Etana bowed down together. They went through the gate of Sin, Shamash, Adad, and Ishtar. The eagle and Etana bowed down together. He pushed it open and went inside. And the rest is missing. So, probably, I know I have a good picture of it depicting a part in the story in here, in this Kingfisher book. Let's see. Here it is. It's actually a pretty nice drawing. So, there's Etana with the eagle, and he's nursed the eagle back to health, and he's made it so he's able to fly again, and so there's the eagle flying away from the pit where he was found. And before moving on, let me just take a quick flip through the Larousse book again and see if there's any particularly good illustrations in here that would serve our purpose. There probably is. I should have found it beforehand, but I may not be able to find it in a hurry. Oh, well, actually, as a side note, here is here's the Stela of Hammurabi, which I was looking for to show you a couple episodes ago. You can see how big that is, and the writing is so small, and of course it's black, so it doesn't show up that well. But um, let's see. Maybe there isn't one in here that depicts our story. No, I guess not. So now we'll go ahead and talk about the Sumerian texts that are the forerunners of what we call the Epic of Gilgamesh. And let me get the book that we usually use for that literature. So again, this is the 1999 translation by Andrew George, and it's the only one I have here that includes these older Sumerian poems. And we'll just go over this quickly, and then talk about this great, this rather extensive literature of Gilgamesh in general. So, in the Sumerian texts, instead of starting with a G, the name starts with a B, so it's called Bilgames, and there's probably there is a sh sound at the end, but it ends with just a plain letter S. So the first one is called Bilgamesh and Akka. Sometimes that's called Aga with G's instead of K's, but this character Akka, as it's said here, is the king of the city of Kish, the same city that Etana is king of in his story. And of course, Bilgamesh is the king of Erech, which is sometimes called Erech the sheepfold, or of the sheepfold. And we know that better as Uruk, so that's the name that's used later in Akkadian, I think, in Akkadian, yes. But in Sumerian times it was called Erech. So Bilgamesh and Akka, that's a story about a war between these two kings, and so between these two city-states. And so, of course, the hero Gilgamesh, who's supposed to have been the king of Uruk around the 28th century BC, he's in what are called the king lists of the Sumerians, and there are more stories about him than any other king from those times. And of course, they told stories about him and went on writing literature about him as a sort of ultimate hero, for hundreds of, for many, many centuries after the time when he's supposed to have lived. So, of course, he wins, he beats the other king, and ends up letting the other king go free. They come to terms. And so the next one is called Bilgamesh and Huwawa, the Lord to the Living One's Mountain, and Ho-Hora. That's how they describe it here. So there are three different versions. I think three, maybe there are two. I see version A and version B. Version A is called The Lord to the Living One's Mountain, because it begins with this line, "The Lord to the Living One's Mountain did turn his mind." So just like traditionally we call the Psalms by their incipit, by the text, the words with which they begin, like De Profundis, this that's the same way we refer to these poems, and to most Mesopotamian literature, or it's very common for them to be referred to by their incipit. So the version A, the Lord to the Living One's Mountain. Version B, they translate whatever it is as Ho-Hara. And it starts like this: Ho-Hara, tall-grown sapling, noble one in whom the gods delight, angry ox, standing ready for combat, young Lord Bilgamesh, honored in Uruk. So who's this Huwawa? That's a monster. And the story is that Gilgamesh and his friend Enkidu, they want to they want to build a new doorway for their temple in their city. For a temple, I can't remember if it's the temple in their own city. But what they need is cedar wood from Lebanon, because that was the best wood you could get anywhere. So the cedar forest in Lebanon in this time, of course, it has a monster guardian. Really, no one's supposed to cut this wood. It's supposed to be only for the gods. So the gods have placed this monster to guard the forest. And so Gilgamesh and Enkidu, they're kind of doing the impossible by by defeating this monster, which they do. And of course, that's sort of the moment when they achieve their greatest feat, and and things start to go against them after that, because it's almost as if they've gone too far. So the monster in these earlier Sumerian poems is called Huwawa. In the Akkadian version, he's called Humbaba, and he's not described in detail really. There are illustrations from the tablets and from ancient art that kind of show him as just this sort of generic-looking monster. Like here's a drawing of one of these old illustrations, so you can see they're killing the monster there, and he's kind of vaguely man-like and monstrous-looking, but very difficult to defeat, and so that's what these stories are about. There's also one called Bilgamesh and the Bull of Heaven, and it begins like this: hero in battle, let me sing his song. Lord Bilgamesh, hero in battle, let me sing his song. So it's referred to here as Bilgamesh and the Bull of Heaven because the goddess Ishtar, whom we discussed in our last video, she kind of falls for Gilgamesh, and he refuses her, and so she has her father, the sky god Anu, send this monstrous celestial bull, referred to as the Bull of Heaven, to kill Gilgamesh and his friend. But instead, they're able to kill the bull, and so Ishtar uses another strategy and causes Enkidu to get sick and die. And so Gilgamesh was unstoppable until just then, and then he's crushed and terror-stricken and in agony because he's lost his friend, and now he's terrified at the prospect of death. So that's here's a little drawing of the two heroes, and they're fighting this bull. So that's the Bull of Heaven. And then there's In Those Days, in Those Far Off Days, and that's the one that we used in the second video in our 10-part series. And in this one, the two characters, the two heroes, Gilgamesh, the king, and his friend Enkidu, they're out, and it seems as if they're playing some kind of ball game, or that they're using these two objects that are not well understood, called the puku and miku, and we're not. I don't think it's really known, or there's debate over what exactly these are, but the two objects, they fall into a chasm in the ground, and they end up in the underworld, and so Enkidu, the companion, he tries to go get them back, and of course, going to you go to the underworld, you're not coming back, so he goes there, and he is overwhelmed by death, and so he has to remain there. But he appears in a ghostly form to his friend and tells him about the underworld. So sometimes in Greek they use the word nekia to mean a journey to the underworld, and so this kind of falls into that category. So as he describes the underworld, he describes, as I discussed in our second video, what happens to different kinds of people when they get there. So there's a man with 5 sons, and so he has like a kind of a nicer life down there. Or a man who's eaten by a lion, and he's still wounded in his hands and feet from being eaten by a lion. a man who was cursed by his parents. He still bears the curse down there. Um, so really, though, no matter how good you have it, no one wants to go there because you can't come back, and it's better to be up here in the land of the living. But that's this story in those days, in those far-off days. Um, Now, the last one, they call it the death of Bilgamesh. And it begins like this: The great wild bull is lying down, never to rise again. The Lord Bilgamesh is lying down, never to rise again. He who was perfect in combat is lying down, never to rise again, and on and on and on. This guy who's like this is lying down, never to rise again. And so he's sick for a series. It says, for 6 days he lay sick. The sweat rolled from his body like melting fat. But because he's the great hero, once he gets there, finally gets to the underworld, after setting things in order in his city-state, he becomes a kind of kingly figure in the underworld. So we'll just we'll read the very end of this, I think. Men, as many as are given names, their funerary statues have been fashioned since days of old, and stationed in chapels in the temples of the gods. How their names are pronounced will never be forgotten. The goddess Aruru, the older sister of Enlil, for the sake of his name, gave men offspring. Their statues have been fashioned since days of old, and their names still spoken in the land. O Eresh Kigal, mother of Ninazu, sweet is your praise. And then it says here, another manuscript concludes differently. The of his ceaseless in the care of Enlil, O Bilgamesh, son of the goddess Ninsun, offshoot, a king who matched him was never born, cannot be found, does not exist. O Bilgamesh, lord of Kulab, sweet is your praise. So there are several of these poems. They're Sumerian. They're from the 3rd millennium BC. And they are the forebears or the beginnings of this literature that is, I would say, beyond doubt, the most famous and influential literature from Mesopotamia, or even the ancient Near East in general, outside of the biblical tradition. So even more so than Atrahasis or Enuma Elish, this tradition is really the one that's at the center of it all. And I'll introduce it a little more because there is a lot of interesting historical context that comes into play here. But I'll stop this one here, and I hope it's been of some interest to you, and I hope you're enjoying this so far, and will continue to do so. And in any case, I'll be seeing you soon. So take care and have a wonderful Friday in the beginning of the month of August. Thanks again.